Hey everybody, welcome back to Fantasy Theory. In today's video, we're going to be breaking down X-Men 97 episode 10 titled Tolerance is Extinction Part 3, which is the finale to the X-Men 97 series. Now, I said in my videos before, I believe that season 2 is pretty much confirmed and they want to get it out as soon as possible. So, I mean, just how this show ended, we'll get into it. There's going to be a season 2. But anyway, let's get right into the breakdown. We're going to theorize, we're going to look at Easter eggs, we're going to explain the ending a little bit, but I think I want to make another video kind of explaining the ending a little more because there's an after credit scene that really sets up, like I said, a big thing that will be, I guess, for season 2. So without further ado, leave a like, drop a comment, and subscribe. Let's get right into this breakdown. The episode was fantastic. I mean, 1 week episode, I think, the Nintendo episode, but the whole season was just great. Every episode just got better and better and better and better. It started off with a bang, and then it just continued to get better and better with Remember It, and then everything after that. But, you know, it's a little sad to end the show right now because I was having a blast doing it, but you know what? I can't wait for season 2. It starts this episode with a previously on, as they always do in the X-Men, and it starts with Magneto's voice. Usually it's Scott's voice, but as we saw in last week's episode, it was Wolverine's. So somebody who has kind of a big role in the last few episodes, like Wolverine in the last one, you know, getting the adamantium ripped from his skeleton, and Magneto in this one, whoever has a big role will have some type of voice role here. The only new shot this week is of Charles and Magneto standing back to back using their powers on an army. This is directly from season 1, the Enter Magneto episode. But let's get right into the episode now. The episode starts with the birds playing. Charles and Magneto are seen in their white lab coats at a bar. This is the bar Magneto brought up, saying that their first time they shared their dreams together were here. You can notice here Charles is able to walk and Magneto has shorter hairstyle. They discuss a possibility of mutants, if they are real, and where they are. I want to note tanks are driving by when he says that, so could he be nervous from talking about this from, you know, his time as being a kid in these concentration camps? And he's just nervous that if he gets caught as a mutant, he'll face a similar fate. Charles takes the leap of faith and uses his powers to speak with Magneto. Magneto then reveals his powers, and they both reveal that they haven't seen anybody like themselves, so no other mutants besides them two. Charles reveals this to be a play on the mind to Magneto, where we see Magneto start to grow his hair back and water start to rise around them. There's also a boat in the distance, and I want you to remember the boat because we'll bring it up later and talk more in depth about it. The boat contains Charles' loved ones like Rogue, Scarlet Witch, and Quicksilver, but somebody else that we'll bring up. Basically showing Magneto that this is out of his reach at the moment and something needs to be done. But let's continue on. Magneto, realizing this, says that the psychic penetration could leave both their minds shattered, which we'll talk about later again in the episode because it starts to become like crunch time for the both of them, Magneto and Charles. Magneto basically says peace will not do it, and an example of that is the Nazis using tanks on his people. We see kind of his history of like, you know, peace and like how like things need to be done because if you just do peace, then another side will take it to the extreme, and he has first-hand encounters of this. We see Charles using his powers after Wolverine got his adamantium ripped out last episode, and Charles unleashes his energy into Magneto's mind, and it's ripped right from the Fatal Attractions comic after Magneto rips, again, the adamantium from Wolverine. And in this comic, I want to note Onslaught was born. So maybe not right now, but possibly in the future we could see Onslaught. Maybe? Perhaps. I did make a video the other day because I was pretty confident that he would be appearing in this, but you know what? They could be going for a longer run here. In this process, Charles uses his powers on Magneto to turn the electricity on Earth back on. And what comes next, I'm sure everybody went crazy like I did, and if you haven't seen that, I went ballistic when I saw this. We see the White Samurai in Tokyo. Captain America and Iron Man are in the White House, both standing beside President Robert Kelly. This Iron Man suit is from the 1994 Iron Man animated series. Over to New York, we see looters stopped by none other than Daredevil. This suit looks to be from the 1999 shelved animated Daredevil series. They never went through with this, but it could be possible that we see this come to life now with how good the X-Men did. We can maybe see the show in production. They didn't do this because they started the movie with Ben Affleck's Daredevil, so, you know, they might just go for it all and do it now. Over to the Manhattan Memorial Hospital, we see Doctor Strange using spells to perform surgery. They even have candles around the hospital room to produce light since everything was shut down. So, I mean, just a ton of great cameos that, you know, I need. And that's not where the cameos stop. but we'll get to them. Bastion realizes his Prime Sentinels are back up and running. This is the aftermath of the last episode, where of course Cable, controlled by Sinister, defeats Jean Grey, but as we know, she is sinking into the water at this moment, and she will emerge soon as the Phoenix. It could even be foreshadowed earlier in the season when she is talking to Wolverine and the water starts to rise around them. The water Jean arises from could go back to what Charles and Magneto are going through at this moment. Bastion and Storm meet and they both tell different stories on an almost throwaway line from the last episode from Professor X. At least I thought it was a throwaway line. Professor X says Bastion's mother slammed the door in his face, but Bastion says his mother told him Charles slammed the door in their faces. So we kind of have two different stories here, so we'll get to who is right later. I know I keep saying we're going to get to things later, but a lot is revealed as the episode goes on. The Prime Sentinels are sent around the world. They crash into the White House, Wakanda, which of course is another cameo of an Avenger. We see the Black Panther. This Black Panther is from the Sanctuary arc because he was seen with a cape, and just from all the cameos we've seen throughout the show, it's safe to assume that this is the same character from the original show. We will later see that this actually is T'Challa's father, T'Chaka. Not sure why they did that. Maybe at this point T'Challa was just a kid, or they just didn't want somebody else to voice T'Challa instead of Chadwick Boseman. We go to New York, which has the Josie's Bar, which was the bar that Matt and Foggy would go often in their show. There's more Daredevil, which is always a plus, but after we get cameos from Dagger and Cloak. These characters have shown up before in the 2012 Ultimate Spider-Man, as well as the series Cloak and Dagger, the live action series. The Russian president is and has his own sort of Avengers, where we see Omega Red, Crimson Dynamo, and Darkstar, which some of these characters were in the Red Dawn episode of the show. Over to the Genosha, we see Cyclops, twins Northstar and Aurora. Aurora was seen a few episodes ago at Gambit's funeral. Cecilia Reyes and Puck. Sinister makes Cable speak to Bastion, where Cable says he failed to stop Bastion 200 times. I wonder how many times and how far each moment was for him. Like, how many times did he make it to Genosha? You know, how many times did he just, like, get there and then get immediately taken out? How many times has he met Scott? He does say in earlier episodes, skip the father and son small talk, so maybe he's just been through it so many times. However, Cable uses his powers, saying, maybe you two should have to listen to what Time's got to say about my mom before she rises from the water as the Phoenix. Interesting enough, this is the first time this season he addresses Jean as his mother and not Madeline. The whole time he makes it clear that she is not, but I guess something changes between last episode and this episode. The Phoenix fixes the crushed scrambler and very easily puts it on Bastion, stopping all the Sentinels from functioning. Hilariously, Jean drains Sinister of all the mutant energy he has put in himself to stay young, and he looks, shall I say, rather interesting. And since he has no mirror, he goes to the closest thing to a mirror, which is Morph, who morphs into him to show what he looks like. And Sinister is just so disgusted, and he just walks or runs away. I mean, we don't see him for the rest of the episode. I have no idea where he goes, but he like just runs away. He's on an island. Where did he go? We did see Sinister do this in his origin episodes that was seen in season 5, so it does kind of line up there. After all that, Bastion comes back and takes out Cable to the point where he rips off his mechanical arm and slaps him in the face with it, just adding insult to injury. He squeezes the arm so hard that it pops open into these kind of like tentacle things. Bastion, who started this episode already looking upgraded from last episode, upgrades yet again, adding a blackish armor to him and wings. This is straight out of the Second Coming story arc. Bastion goes to, I guess, plan B, which is just to hurl Asteroid M into Earth for extinction. Back to Asteroid M, we get an update on them. Magneto and Charles have pulses, and so does Wolverine. Cyclops says to Wolverine,
"Don't you dare break her heart. Be the best at what you do. Heal."
Which is basically him acknowledging how Jean and Wolverine mean a lot to each other, which is interesting. He says, be the best at what you do. Heal. So we know he is more than just adamantium, but I really wonder if they will follow the story where he becomes more animalistic after this attack. Charles uses his telepathy to Scott and Jean, and he explains he must help Magneto's mind, even if it destroys himself as well. So again, it's more of a crunch time thing for them now. Rogue reminds the team,
odds may be bad, but the cards are always in the X-Men's favor.
And I love this line because it just keeps Gambit's memory and spirit alive in the team. Rogue absolutely beats the crap out of Bastion, saying his name was Gambit, remember it. Exactly what Gambit said before he sacrifices himself on Genosha. We even see briefly a tear come out of her eyes as she's kicking his ass, where she quickly stops the tears. I also want to add the animators give a little something to people who said Rogue was nerfed in some certain ways, and I'll just leave it right at that. You know what I'm talking about. Rogue throws Bastion into the blue side of the moon, which appeared in Season 3, and explains why the X-Men can breathe there because there is oxygen on this part. Rogue moves Bastion's head up just to give him a Hulk-like thunderclap, destroying his jaw. Roberto or Sunspot, now because I think he is starting to acknowledge that, saves Rogue after Bastion starts to gain the upper hand on her. And it's interesting that he saved her and it wasn't the other X-Men like Nightcrawler, who is her half-brother. You know, I get that he could fly, but it's the two X-Men that took Magneto's side in the previous episode. The Magneto Protocol is seen in the War Room, and they're talking to world leaders like T'Chaka. Interesting enough, Magneto's file has his power ratings, and I just noticed that his speed is his lowest. But his names say Eric, but also David Nemblin, who was the original voice actor who passed away, also Ian and Michael, which of course is the two actors who played him in the Fox live-action movies. His affiliations are listed like the Acolytes, the Brotherhood of Mutants, and the X-Men. He's widowed and his kids are Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, and P. Redacted, who could be Polaris, who of course all are seen on the boat later in the episode. Charles appealing to Magneto, saying, while the tide of our past can drag us under, it also carries us to others who are fighting their own current, and that's when we see all of Magneto's loved ones that we mentioned. We don't see his widowed wife, which makes sense, but we also don't see Charles, but it could be because Charles is projecting it. Charles's children, however, we cannot see their faces, but we could see Rogue's. Magneto acknowledges that he can't see their faces. He also starts to remember the German soldier's boots who took his parents, and you can even see the fear in his eyes and the tone of his voice start to shake because of that. Nightcrawler and Bastion fight momentarily until we get a face-off of powers between Cyclops and Bastion, where
You'll never hurt my family again!
And Cyclops is just so angry and temporarily defeats him until Jubilee finishes it off by dropping his Sentinel head onto Bastion. But this dude won't go down and he gets up all messed up. Like, I mean, wires hanging out of his mouth, not connected, eyes falling out, and so much more. But quickly just reforms back into his normal self, maybe for the most part at least. When Bastion thinks the Sentinel is here to help, it just crushes him, and it's the X-Men who are back on Earth who we saw Forge and Beast tinkering with the Sentinel to get it up and running, so they do that. But it's interesting, we don't see Forge here. We know Cable stays back because we see him in the diner. They all fight down, and Morph even turns into Sauron for a second just to get down for like 2 seconds. Bastion again raises up, holding the Sentinel foot, but Cyclops realizes it's time to stop fighting. Cyclops appeals to his human side, same as how Storm tried to earlier in the episode, and Bastion got so angry about, saying his mother lied. Momentarily, they position Bastion's one eye in Cyclops' mask, and just when we think things might be okay, the humans unleash a missile attack on Asteroid M. The Asteroid M starts to plummet to Earth because of this. Momentarily, Morph turns into Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, to stop himself from flying out of the asteroid, but Jubilee is shot out of the asteroid until she is saved by Roberto. They also try to save Bastion, but he'd rather not live in a world where the X-Men were right. And then we get this insanely emotional scene that low-key got me teary-eyed. Scott wants to stay back and stop this from crashing into Earth, so we see Jean project themselves into the diner where Cable is out. Kind of funny enough though, Cable is seen wrapped up where his arm was ripped off, so like I just want to say, like, did he really need that? Because it was a mechanical arm, there was no blood. Like, was this just for like show and like for effect? But let's get serious again. Scott says Madeline said Nathan has his father's eyes, and Jean uses her powers to let Scott take off his visor and have Cable look upon him with his own eyes. All this being in blue is very reminiscent of Madeline when she gave baby Nathan away to Bishop when she implanted the memory on him, because that was in blue. Before Scott goes, they fade away and we see a small tear in his eye until he's back on Asteroid M, which that same tear is in the opening shot of that, and where he starts to destroy the asteroid. 2 guys on Earth listen to what's happening on the radio station, which is 1996.6, which people were kind of showing on Twitter and theorizing that maybe this is the year 1996 in the month of June, since that's the 6th month of the year, which is where in that issue Onslaught was born. I didn't even notice this but when we were watching, but in the TV, it's Peter Parker and MJ, Mary Jane. The importance of this scene was back in the animated Spider-Man series. Spider-Man was with a clone of MJ until she died, and then later went on with Madam Web to go find the real MJ. So it seems like after this, he really did find her. Also, Flash Thompson's in the background. I don't know why. Morph is there with Wolverine. It just shows how close of friends they are. Where Morph kind of rather maybe in his final moments be with with Wolverine. She even turns into Jean to say, "I love you." Magneto realizes that it's Professor Charles Xavier. Magneto wakes up and says, "Magneto lives!" which will stop the asteroid from crashing until once they get into space, it blows up into particles, and that's just it for them. We get a time jump of 6 months later, and they refer to this day as E-Day. Listening to the radio is Forge. We hear Creighton Creed is getting an edge in the presidential race. On the wall, we see missing, presumed dead, Cyclops, Jean, Storm, Beast, Magneto, Nightcrawler. Julie and Roberto are AWOL. Charles presumed dead, Scarlet Witch off-world, and Colossus. Morph and Storm missing, presumed dead. Dust, Archangel missing or presumed dead. Magic, Wolverine missing, presumed dead. Iceman, Havoc, Cavill, AWOL. Exodus, Quicksilver, Off-World, Shadowcat, and Emma Frost. Bishop returns, saying that him and Forge are friends, and they need to find the X-Men. So the two timelines that are shown here, which are lost in time, is 300 BC, Rogue, Nightcrawler, Beast, Charles, and Magneto, while in the future, 3960 AD, Scott and Jean. However, Wolverine, Morph, and Storm, Bo DeMeo said they're in one of the two timelines, so it could be either of them, but with a fan commenting, he kind of clarified that they're in 3960. Young Nathan comes out, and we also see Mother Ascani, which is Rachel Summers, their daughter. So the kids are together, and this is where Nathan ended up after Bishop lost him. The others in the past meet...
My name is En Sabanur.
Who this is the original name of Apocalypse, the first known mutant on Earth. At this point, I believe he's taking the name Apocalypse, and he's like even seen as like a god, and he starts to recruit people for his Four Horsemen, and that will play later in the after credit scene because there's more. Present day Genosha. Apocalypse retreats the Queen of Hearts card, which was featured throughout the whole season with Gambit when he found out Rogue and Magneto were hooking up, or when Rogue said she was going to take Magneto instead of him. So we find the card, picks it up, he says, "So much death." So basically, we're going to assume he's trying to get Gambit to be one of his Four Horsemen of his death. But that's how the episode ended. I mean, there's just so much to unpack. So many cameos, so many things happened, so many things set up, so many things answered. I mean, this show was just absolutely fantastic. I cannot wait for season 2. Wow, it was great. I mean, I just want to say thank you to everybody who watched these breakdowns, who theorized with me. Just it was so much fun. I honestly think this is the best Marvel show to date. Loki could be up there with it, but I do think X-Men 97 is definitely the best one, and I had no expectations for this show, so it's going to be really exciting for season 2. Let me know what you thought of the season, what you thought of the episode, what are your craziest theories for season 2, what you noticed that I didn't point out. Leave a like, drop a comment, and subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, and have an incredible day.